trippy.
Schwarzschild.
Schwarzschild.
So he's the first guy to say the singularity and what it was.
Yeah.
How would they even know before computers and whatnot?
Well, he solved Einstein's field equations that predicted that there would be a singularity point, and he used
Just
the
making
term.
sure everybody else is on the same page.
And then he Googled the singularity and decided that was the answer.
Right.
Was that different than the singularity we're talking about? Like the technological one?
Well, the modern version of singularity is when the internet gets smarter than people.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about all the singularities.
So this is before that.
All the singularities. All the singularities. I'm sorry. All right. Woo! Very dumb.
Put an event horizon on
I
it.
want to apologize to you every 2 minutes because I feel like I'm making you dumber.
So it basically means change. It's a word that means change.
Okay.
Singularity means change.
Yeah. Falling into unpredictable change.
Wow.
And so just to clarify, there can be many different singularities then.
Yeah.
For example, a career in comedy.
Are you living in the singularity?
I am, yeah. Every day.
Soon robots, though, are going to take over, and they're going to be able to predict and tell better jokes, though, right? And then we'll be obsolete. I'm just saying.
Not if they're like stuck at an open mic on a Monday
Right.
night. I think they're going to call it quits.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
A robot just killing himself at the open mic?
Imagine it. Give me back the spreadsheets.
Yeah. That's got sad.
Right.
So we had mentioned just a second ago that there was a singularity for the strength of artificial intelligence. There's a singularity at the center of a black hole. How many other singularities are there?
Well, on Wikipedia, last I checked, there was more than a dozen different definitions of a singularity.
What would be other relatable examples?
After you've exhausted dating.
Okay, there we go. Does that apply to you, my friend? I hope not.
You're like, everything's fine.
Yeah, everything is fine. I felt like a moment of intensity between us, and I just wanted to look away. I can't help you. I'm not the guy.
Maybe we talk about this actual, the initial 1916 definition of it for a minute. So what actually occurs at the center of a black hole?
Well, nobody really knows, and various physicists and cosmologists, they call them, have swapped their opinions about it several times over their life, trying to figure it out. But it basically is a mathematical thing that maps onto the physical world in the universe, and it predicted black holes would be there, and nobody's actually seen a real black hole directly. It's predicted in the distortion of gravity and light and other things around black holes suggest that the theory is accurate and they're real, but a mathematical singularity is sort of like dividing by zero, where things go to an unpredictable number. And in physics, that's not likely to be that precise, where it's more like falling over a waterfall, where you're swimming along in the river and everything seems fine. As you come closer and closer to the edge, things become a little bit unpredictable, and then you're swept over the event horizon, falling down the waterfall. Certainly your swimming will be different, and whether you hit the pool or hit the rocks is unknown until it happens. And a black hole singularity, like Stephen Hawking struggles with the concept, if you had a clock and the clock told time and you threw the clock into a singularity, into a black hole, would the clock remember its time as it fell in or after it fell in? And one of the more exotic theories about what are black holes is a black hole for us may be a Big Bang for somebody else, and we might be living inside of somebody else's black hole.
Whoa. No pun intended. Does anyone else feel like they're living in a black hole right now?
Oh my gosh, that was a lot. My face the whole time just watching you, this like just trying to listen so hard.
I forgot the English language for a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you think we're living inside a black hole?
Yes.
So wait, someone
yes?
else's black hole?
Yeah. Our Big Bang had to come from somewhere.
Wow. I hope it's a clean black hole, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, just in terms of like wet wipes and things, I definitely bring them.
I like how I'm looking around just for like extra gunk.
Extra gunk
Or
in
something.
the hole.
So we're in
Clean up
somebody
that
else's
clock.
black hole. Maybe that explains
So this
our.
could go on forever. They're in someone else's black
gonna
hole, and
say
there's
something
another one after that.
Yeah.
I think we're back to deep fakes, to be honest. I think.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So
Like
so then
euphemism here.
so then at the center of the Milky Way galaxy could be the start of another potential universe.
Well, it's thought to be at the center of most galaxies is a black hole, and that's the attractor that pulls together the light and dark matter that forms the galaxies. And sometimes black holes collide with each other and has ripple effects of gravity that's been observed recently.
They collide like a double black hole?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Double black hole coming
Double
at you
black hole.
Friday night.
Deepface.com.
Ew, double black hole is don't Google it after, kids. You're gonna be scared.
Don't.
So what happens when that happens?
Nobody knows. Well, it certainly sends out gravity waves that seem to arrive here a little faster than the light waves.
I can understand why a lot of America is like, science ain't real, because it's scary. It's nobody wants to believe that these things happen. I know we're in a black hole, and we're
Black
like
hole, yeah.
we're in a black hole.
Give up on your comedy career. It's not gonna happen. We're in a black hole.
It
It's
feels
just-
like
too much.
cosmology especially seems to be much more abstract than psychology maybe or economics.
Cosmetology, like
Yeah.
makeup.
Just maybe. Well, I think black hole is a metaphor for many different fields. I think psychology, you can feel like you're in a black hole because you feel like you're in a black hole. It all affects each other.
Reese, another follow-up question about maybe the center of a black hole is what the filing of what is it? Is this the atoms that come down? Do they separate even further? It's coming to a single point.
Well, so the mathematics predicts a single point, but that isn't very common sense from a physics point of view, in that the mathematics may predict that, but what's actually in the center of a black hole isn't really known. And the thing about mathematical physics is it kind of works in the middle range, so what they call Newtonian physics, where things that are very big, like the cosmos and black holes, physics doesn't predict very accurately, and things that are very small, like quantum mechanics and particle physics, regular physics doesn't predict very well. And so we're used to this middle range of things that are kind of the size of us, but the mathematics that's developed for it works pretty well for flying airplanes and things. But when things get big or get small, you have to use different theories and different mathematics.
Let's go on to
Anybody
the next
got that?
question.
Stunned silence.
Boom.
Just tripping out, and we're in a
So
black
if
hole
you
right now.
keep going into black hole after black hole, like I'm stuck on this whole like we're in a black hole and then we're in someone else's black hole and then it keeps going out, but then it would keep going in too, right?
Because it sucks you in, right? It sucks in all the energy, and it's like pacha, and it creates something.
And then on the other side
like-
is the Big Bang. And then
I feel
Okay, so there's like a wall that you go through. So on this side it's something, and then on this side it's something else.
Well, one way to think about it is we may be like in a bottle of 7-Up, and
Okay.
and our universe is a bubble in the
In the
mini
bottle of
bubbles.
7-Up.
and these are the bubbles coming out of each other
Just
are,
looks
are,
like your-
are black
JNO.
This is just getting. I feel we're in an
are,
episode of
are
Black
black holes
Mirror.
turning into
I'm
big
worried
bangs.
about who's going to drink the 7-Up at some point.
Yeah. Eventually,
Or beer.
lose its carbonation. Okay.
awesome. All right, let's go on to question number 2.
All right.
All right, Reese, read off the question, please.
So besides Moore's law, what else improves exponentially? And the falling into a black hole or
Ooh, I think we have some answers here.
Everyone's
is an
excited.
exponential function, and so some things get better exponentially, like Moore's law in computers.
Do you want to explain Moore's law just
is it
briefly?
still-
So things get, like your phone gets twice as good every year, roughly, and that's because primarily because the semiconductors that get smaller and denser and a higher density every 18 months in an exponential way. And so other things, information technology and in physics, improve in this exponential way. And what would be another common
Okay.
example?
All
So,
right.
common?
Or
Do I
your
get
choice.
do I get the answer?
It could be obscure too.
Okay, so storage and data communications. Are those two valid?
Those are both valid.
Yeah, and then
Is that it?
Is that
or
what you're
it-
going for?
Are you looking for a particular name
Well,
of a
a
different
particular
law?
one, like a law.
There's a law to it.
So in communications,
Wrong. Sorry.
Wrong.
Get
I fought the law, and I have no clue what's going on.
Not nerdy enough.
Yeah, if you get the answer wrong, you got to wrestle one of us, and you don't get to choose. So get ready.
So
Pick
in
me,
communications, you use a law. I wouldn't know the name. I have to think about it.
Okay.
so wireless communications is
Yeah.
a Eureka answer.
Exactly.
Is
Yeah.
it-
so
Is that it? Okay. All right. Eureka, come on.
What was the answer? Wireless communication.
So the answer is wireless communications.
I don't think
It's
this is fair though.
it's all right.
What's the law?
What's the name of the law?
What's the name of the law?
So I'm thinking signal strength as well, but are you referring to just
Like how fast
ahead.
can you send things wirelessly
yeah, so
over the last 100 years?
You can come to the center. Yeah, we can all see.
I'm not sure what's going
Everyone's
on
getting
here.
a deep
Yes.
fake look, by the way, as you come up on stage. And what's your name, by the way?
Glenn.
Glenn.
Yeah.
All right, great, Glenn.
Glenn all the way from Miami.
Oh, sweet, welcome.
All the way from where?
All right, so the answer is what? And now, you want to ask questions? Let me give you your prize first, my man. I know you're so excited. So now, wireless communications. You have a wireless communication device yourself?
Oh yeah, I think so.
You do? A couple of them? All right, we're going to give you actually the original wireless communication device. I think everyone loves this. The first one, the only one, the Ouija board. The first wireless communication device. When you want to reach out to your ancestral spirits, but Sprint won't do it. Have you ever used a Ouija board?
Maybe in college.
Okay, well,
You
it's
have to have
time
a
to
sleepover with all your best pals, and then you'll kiss.
time to use it again, my friend. Here it
Are we all on
is.
stage? Awesome.
Yeah, you don't use it on stage. Don't worry. You can bring back. Give Glenn a big round of applause.
Glenn.
Man, he came all the way from Miami to win a Ouija board.
Wow.
Good
The
stuff.
spirits are guiding you, Glenn.
All right.
So on the left is, or on the right is Bradley Cooper, who shoots bullets sometimes. And on the left is Marty Cooper, who invented the cell phone.
Okay, so there's a difference.
You called him Marty Cooper, like you guys are pals.
Yeah.
Oh, are you actually friends with him?
Well, I know him, yeah.
Oh,
Guys,
okay.
why are we not freaking out?
Wow.
Yeah,
We're-
do you all know Marty Cooper? No. It's a big deal.
I can't wait to tell my friend Bradley Cooper that he knows Martin.
That's amazing. Could you guys introduce me? I know no Cooper on the
I don't know
screen.
any damn Coopers.
This following slide puts it into really good perspective. Reese, do you want to explain?
Well, so there's Marty Cooper in the middle in the 80s when he first did the first cellular phone call. And this line is an exponential graph as to how fast you can send things on wireless. And if you reflect back on when the Titanic hit the iceberg and was sinking, the fastest they could send was Morse code, like the dash, dat, dash, dat. Every year, it's been getting more or less twice as fast to where now you can do high-res video conferencing like we're doing here over the same wireless spectrum. And so it's something that is an exponentially improving technology that gets twice as good every year. So if you use that kind of technology to solve problems, your solution to the problem gets twice as good every year. So if you use a phone for food security or to poverty, your solution to poverty will naturally get twice as good without extra work because the underlying technology tool is getting better. And this is what Singularity University teaches about.
Yeah, exponential technology is fascinating. Is this 1895? This is the first invention of wireless communication. That's binary. That's this beep beep beep. This is code that's sent.
Beep-berry.
This is the
Beeping language.
fastest communication back then.
Yeah, well,
for-
this chart is something I made, but it's electric
Morse code.
wireless. It goes back further than that, where, for example, smoke signals or flag signals.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's been getting better and better for a long time.
Is this?
Why is
Can
he
you-
yelling on there?
Oh, yeah. When did yelling begin?
I couldn't figure out how to protect it or
You're
make
yelling?
it visible.
Can you maybe?
Am I blind?
How is the
No, it's not
signal
really on there.
for from Morse code until iPhone, what is actually occurring? What is the process of the wireless communication?
Well, so when you send something wirelessly through the air, what you receive has noise in it. And so what you're sending is a signal, and what you receive is noise and signal. And so using computing and better physics and better antennas to pick out the signal from the noise allows you to send more and more data. And as the computers get better, the signal to noise gets better. And so this is an exponentially trending technology that is seems to happen on a consistent pace over hundreds of years without anybody, whether there's famines or pandemics or wars or abundant times, almost like a natural progression, as if it's evolving naturally. And it may be part of a evolution of complexity into more efficiency and higher complexity and higher bandwidth that becomes increasingly efficient, but that means as society gets more efficient, it becomes less and less visible from outer space, which may be why we don't see advanced societies in other locations in space, which is an answer to something called the Fermi Paradox and the theory of increasing complexity and efficiency is called the transcension hypothesis, where we fall into more and more complexity, more and more inside the internet, and we disappear.
People out there, we just can't see them because they're so complex and evolved.
Yeah, they're all plugged into their phones and online all the time.
Oh my God.
Is this like disturbing anyone here?
Yeah, everybody's so
very.
calm here.
But every
Yeah,
answer
everyone's
will make
like, yeah, I already knew
yeah,
that.
there's a bunch of other people.
Anything new you want to tell me?
But
You
do you
guys should
think
be
they're just like us, like humans, or do you think they're like aliens and
Well, they may be electric.
Are you saying that
What?
they just like downloaded their consciousness
they may
into
be
a...
electric, like they're a bunch of Priuses just walking around? Like I don't.
Are you saying that
I
there are
don't get it.
civilizations
Chevy
of
Volt.
max headrooms all over the place?
Well, or life is short and then you become electric.
Whoa.
Trip out. Just pass the bong. Let's all
Electric
enjoy this
humans.
moment.
So,
So we're living in a black hole, and we're all
Yeah.
electric.
We're all
Or
electric.
will be electric.
Because that's the
Are
most
we-
efficient way to live post-flush vehicle.
Flesh
Thank you.
vehicle.
Don't put that on your dating profile, by the way. Flesh vehicle, wrong message to
I
send.
Wait,
aspire
did
to
I
be
miss
post
something about
flesh
flesh vehicle?
Flesh vehicle.
Oh, flesh vehicle.
Yeah.
I think you meant flush vehicle. I'm like, you mean a toilet? Like, I don't know.
The flesh vehicle uses the flesh
A
vehicle.
flesh
Yeah.
vehicle. Oh, God.
so
This is poison.
it's not completely far-fetched. If you think about Einstein's most famous equation of E equals mc squared,
Think about it a lot.
E
I bet, I bet you do.
All the time.
You got it now. in the black
M,
hole.
which is like the physical part of us, is equal to E. So you can change from mass to energy or from energy to mass.
Who here just make some noise if you would like to transfer yourself into an electric form?
I don't think you know what you're
Okay.
signing up for.
Okay.
Yeah, what if you... Can you go back?
Can you go back?
Yeah, it's an equal sign. You can go either way.
Really?
Oh, then yeah, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
You know how quick the drive
Yeah.
from LA to San Francisco is going to be? That was going to be awesome.
There's a couple of
I
electrons
just like
here
hit a
from Nick.
button and then I appear in this theater. And then I go, oh, I forgot
Teleportation.
my camera at home, and I go back.
So if you're electric, do you still like feel? I don't know what I'm even asking.
I think she's trying to say, can you fuck while you're electric?
Yeah.
Let's just cut
Or
right
are you
to
just
it.
like a bunch
Can
of
we
like
still do it
particles?
hard?
Are you just like a light bulb with arms? Like I don't know.
And evidently, you can change heads and bodies. And
Yeah.
That's right.
Really? Can you actually?
This company is the deep face thing. Remember?
Deep fakes.
Everything
Are
is
we
going to
all on the
circle
same
back
page
to deep
here?
face.
Is it gonna?
Let's get
come-
back to the business
Okay,
plan.
sorry.
Remember? Black hole, deep fakes.
Right.
So
electric
how
bodies.
far are we from something like that?
well, most people are on their phone quite frequently, and most people have their electronic self on Facebook and whatnot. And so we're already partly there, where more and more of who we are is in the internet, and our interactions are happening whether we're paying attention to it or not. And so when our body stops, or when we're asleep, our internet self can continue on.
It's so disturbing. It's really, it's like you watching Black Mirror on Netflix.
Yeah.
No
I feel like
spoilers. I
I'm
haven't seen the new
I mean,
season.
but you obviously can't be your actual self online. It's just whatever information.
It's whatever you
Because
put
you
out
look
there.
look on anyone's online self. It's like everyone's like younger, cooler, thinner, happier.
Well, do the Kardashians exist in physical reality?
Well, no, they're a
I mean,
spiritual
unfortunately,
form.
they do. Yeah.
Yeah, they
No, but
they
like I get
exist
what you're
above
saying
us.
though. Like how we know the Kardashians is like all from like
Right, electronic.
So
media.
Eventually, you're saying our physical bodies will just sit in a pod somewhere with like a thing on, and we'll just exist online forever.
Well, you can move more and more of yourself to the internet, and you can give it your personality.
Yeah.
And as it learns to be you better and better, you can give it a credit card and then set it free.
Right.
Just like you do your
Wow.
children.
And that's what the singularity is. Like of the internet learning us better than we know ourselves. So I can be a better
The
version of
singularity
me
is a
on the
credit
World
card
Wide
with
Net.
no limits.
There's
my
a lot
God.
of significance
This is-
to that. Once you have your personality really well learned online, you can live forever.
I have an annoying personality online, so I don't know if I want to actually like perpetuate it. I kind of think it
Yeah.
should die.
Like somebody can go and access Kevin Whittinghill in 1,000 years, and they'll be like, "Oh wow!" Like,
But Kevin ain't gonna know that's happening
Would
unless
I-
he's some electric man at
Yeah,
this
what
point.
happens if
Like,
you're man?
What
Yeah.
happens
wait,
if your
that
body
actually
dies?
puts us to a good question. Would that personality on the internet be conscious? Would it be aware of itself being accessed by other people?
Well, how do we know that we're conscious?
What?
Here we go. All right.
Oh man.
I need that beer. We just-
Okay, so, and I
How do you know this is even happening right now?
So-
Okay.
so
There we go. Yeah.
So, without getting very past the bongy, maybe
Scientific term.
yeah. Maybe a good way to answer this thought is that maybe is consciousness localized in this human nervous system?
Most likely, and free will is likely localized in the cosmology, physics, quantum mechanics sense, in that we have some limited free will over what's happening near us in the present moment, but in the long term, we may not have very much free will, and our karmic destiny may be directing us where we think we're in charge, but we're probably not.
So then the follow-up question then is if this consciousness is localized in this human nervous system, then when it does get booted up onto the internet, once it learns well enough of my personality, is that then conscious?
Well, there's the Long Now Foundation has a wager called the Long Bets, where people with different points of view can make a bet. And there's currently a bet between Mitch Kapor, who started Lotus and many things, and Ray Kurzweil, who wrote a Singularity is Near book. And the bet is whether or not the Turing test, which is can the internet basically fool us into thinking it's an actual real person, will that test be passed successfly by
30?
2029, I think, or
Yeah.
I can't remember the date on their bet, but they're, and Ray Kurzweil is betting that yes, it will, and Mitch
Yeah.
Kapor is betting no, it won't. And both of them have put money into the jar, and the winner, the money goes to their charity of choice.
That's great. That's a
I was
great fun
fooled
bet.
by a girl in New Jersey who turned out to be a guy online. Does that count?
I do think that within 12 years that we will have indistinguishable beings that we can't tell if they're human or not.
They're just
So-
like internet people. Not like one human is the internet. Hello, I am internet. Hey.
Well, we already have like advances with sex robots.
You love talking about
But I'm
these
just
sex
saying,
robots.
like Justin Timberlake's new music video has like one of these sex robots dancing in it.
What about that? What's that robot, Sophia?
Huh?
Yeah, Sophia and Bina, they're social robots. They're some of the smartest in the world. They have this whole planetary library, some of the strongest resource that people can tap into for having an archive of everything that's ever existed to be able to talk to another human. They're slowly building it up, and it's insanely incredible.
So Sophia, the robot, did agree to kill all humans when asked. That's
Oh,
on
yeah.
video, by the way.
Also,
Yeah.
didn't it's one of these nerd fests? Didn't they didn't they
So
have
many.
some sort of sex robot that they created or like whatever? And like the men treated her so poorly. Like I don't think we're ready for fucking sex robots because
Can't
men
treat
can't
women
even control
properly?
themselves around actual physical humans now, and they're like, it's not real, it's a sex robot. I'm like, she still knows things, and they abused her so badly. Does anybody remember this?
Well,
I feel you. I
This
feel
got
you.
real.
Yeah,
there's
fucking
me
robot.
Too for robots. Also.
Exactly,
Me
which
Too
is
for
so
robots.
fucked up.
Jeez.
It's like we haven't even solved our own shit.
Yeah.
Now we're just like
pass it
abusing
on to-
robots.
So Reese, so
I didn't
just
do it.
Mad.
I just want to come back to wireless efficiency communication quick. Just real quick, just to
What
go,
is that about?
Go on to
Oh,
the
yeah.
next question.
Shit.
Before we go on to the next question, okay, so we go from this Morse code to the 10,000 cell sites in U.S. in 1992. So what's next? What's in 20 years, 30 years? I know we're kind of talking about that right now, but in terms of communication efficiencies.
Well, something that's particularly interesting to me is on the internet, which has evolved a fair ways. You can, it carries sound and pictures and text and some amount of content of that. But the communications between us right now in this physical reality is many times more, like 10 or 12 megabits per second, between what you can feel and what I can feel from you. And so
It's quantifiable.
it's quantifiable. Well, that's an estimate. But the internet...
It's like a Comcast download speed.
That's for all
Slower
things.
for-
But the internet right now carries abstract, minimal information. And the next generation should be able to carry feelings, and a feeling internet, which I would call a limbic internet, which you can feel what the other people are feeling that you're
Isn't that called
interacting.
Twitter? Isn't that
Yeah.
just what that's become?
Oh my gosh, that would stop people from being
Oh, I
so
know.
assholey on the internet.
Because you don't feel when you're tweeting like you're a dumb cunt to someone. Not that I do that.
Speaking for a
Can
friend.
you imagine you follow me on Twitter? I'm just calling everybody the C word. Like,
yeah.
wow, she
Thanks
seems
for the
so
follow,
nice.
you dumb.
All right, good stuff. Let's go on to our next
Okay,
question.
next question.
Let's do it.
We just wanted to clarify where you stood on Twitter.
So what is the maximum speed of wireless communication?
We have a smarty pants back there that wants to
Smarty
hit up the
pants.
question again.
Uh,
All right.
feel free to jump in too.
Speed of light. Pigeon.
That's pretty good. It may be faster than that.
Wait, what was the answer?
Speed of
Speed
light.
of light.
Double speed of light.
Speed of
So-
light. Yeah. +1.
So the trick word there is
Times
bandwidth.
infinity, is it? Oh.
Bandwidth.
Is that Eureka worthy, or should we keep going?
Yeah, okay, that's a Eureka.
Okay, Eureka.
We're just giving these Eurekas
Eureka.
So
wait.
the key to answering the question is just answer and then go, come on. And then it'll let you,
Essentially it.
and then you get the prize.
Do you know how hard these questions are?
So wait, what's the real answer?
We'll get to the
Get
exact
to that in a moment. All right, you obviously have some wireless devices. You have bandwidth. I mean, do you like have Spotify on your phone or anything like that? You do. First, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay.
Lindsay,
Lindsay.
very good. So we have for you, since we care about how you use your bandwidth. We know you may listen to music. We have these wonderful nerdy headphones.
Ooh, oh my
Look at
God.
that.
yeah.
Geek it out. You want to try them on?
Oh my gosh, their ears. Oh.
These
God.
are super nerdy.
Cool.
Oh, it goes this way. Sorry, I don't watch these shows.
Oh, you done it. Oh, really? That's a dig.
Oh no. Get her.
Oh, give them back. Okay. All right, you got it on
wow.
there. Let's see. Like you loop around right there. There it is. Oh, look at that. See?
Oh my gosh. Those are
Who's the
ridiculous.
popular kid on Muni? I think you are, Lindsay.
Oh my God.
Give her a round of applause.
Hey. Wear those in the bedroom. Meow. All right.
So speed of light.
So speed of light is a correct answer, which is more or less if the wireless is optical or if it's radio waves. But there's a trick element to that in that if you use the speed of light to there, you can reuse it again to there and to there and to there. So you can actually have a bandwidth, which is all of the speed combined, that's theoretically infinite and faster than the speed of light.
Can you explain using this graphic? Because you can't, when light is, a photon's traveling, you're not using that same photon to travel somewhere else.
Right.
So how, but can you?
And so you can have, like a cellular network is reusing the same frequencies in different locations. So you're not limited by the speed of one photon or one spot, because you can be using it again to the right and again to the left. And so you, by adding more and more cells and adding smaller and smaller cells and higher frequencies, you can go faster and faster and faster. So people are somewhat worried that we'll run out of bandwidth or we'll run out of speed, but that doesn't seem to be the case theoretically.
And so does that mean then that we kind of build these honeycomb structures around the Earth, and then there's enough of them to make it so that when the photon arrives at the receiver, then it gets sent immediately to another one? Is that how the communication's bouncing around?
Partly, it's more what is the speed of the wireless part of that. They're still getting it from this side of the Earth to the other side of the Earth.
So are those bitcoins? I'm lost.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I kind of want to nod and say, okay, next question.
Some thingies set up so they have something to bounce off of, right?
Yeah, well, those are
That's basically it.
those are cellular networks, and
It's like a fun house, like with the mirrors, and you're like, whoa, and they're all bouncing off, and you're like, I'm everywhere.
I think
Science.
you nailed it. Is Funhouse a good analogy?
sure.
Okay. I felt him pat me on the head when he said that.
Yeah.
I felt that pat.
She went to clown college. Just give it to her.
Yeah.
So by putting up this massive honeycomb structure of tons and tons of these and having really high frequency throughout them, then that can theoretically infinitely give us infinite bandwidth.
Yeah, theoretically. So we're about to move from 4th generation cellular to 5th generation cellular.
What does that mean?
It's the generations are since the first version in the 80s to it's gotten more or less a generation per decade, and what they call 5G cellular will be coming next year in the decade after that.
Wow.
And that's using more than one radio frequency to get between you and the other cell tower.
And previously it was only one.
Yeah, and this has already happened with Wi-Fi, where Wi-Fi now has multiple antennas and multiple frequencies, and your device can be using 2 at a time or 4 at a time. And cellular is about to go through the same transition, and it should get like 100 times faster.
And that's
Oh
5G.
my gosh.
5G.
Much different than OG, which was the first one in the 1980s.
Right, those-
Original one.
Okay, I'm just trying to follow along here with what I know as an OG myself.
Are these frequencies hurting us?
Are they what?
Are
Yeah,
these
we-
frequencies hurting us? Because we're all like on our phones all the time. Is the frequency like going into my brain?
Yeah,
and-
well, it's microwave generally range frequencies that vibrate at the frequency of water, and so it's the same as putting yourself in a microwave oven.
Just the same as. We've all experienced that.
Just like
right?
that. Sign up, Verizon, tomorrow.
at a very low power.
What other hobbies do you have outside?
And they and magnetic resonance imaging (MRIs) do kind of the same thing.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of studies done to see, well, what effect does this have on people? And it turns out they looked at people who were exposed to lots of radio waves and microwaves, and they like the people whose job it is to aim the antennas, and they're around millions of times more microwaves than a normal person is every day. And they don't have a higher incidence of cancer, they don't have a higher incidence of heart disease, they don't have higher incidences of more exotic disease, but they do have one effect.
Third arms. A lot of third arms.
Well,
Do they glow in the dark?
Sadly.
Oh, that's just between your legs.
well,
Maybe that's a bonus.
Oh, I thought you meant about my glow in the dark comment. I'm like, oh, gross. Do they glow in the dark just between your legs, honey? Ah.
So the researchers called the effect non-specific aging. in that they die
sounds
in
like
the same proportions of different things, but they die sooner and they look older and they wear out faster, like being cooked on a slow boil.
Sounds
That
like a
sounds
Hollywood
like
term.
that sounds like a spin
Horrendous.
answer.
Yeah.
That's something
exactly.
Kellyanne Conway would say during a press conference.
Right.
It's not
an
doing
al-
anything
It's alternative
bad to
cancer,
you.
guys. It's
You're
not
just-
real.
You're
It's
just dying
alternative.
faster and leaving an uglier corpse.
Jesus.
Okay.
Specific age.
Maybe that's why we can't see other civilizations. It's because they cancered themselves to death trying to be on Snapchat all day long.
It's possible.
So it's just non-specific, like they're just like uglier.
They're wearing
my-
out faster.
Is my iPhone making me ugly?
It's non-specific.
I'm gonna write a think piece.
So how old are you generally? I'm generally old. Not
God.
specific.
There are also people that have to live completely away from these communication towers because they feel such sensitivity to
Yeah,
them.
yeah. So, some people.
Is that like a gluten intolerance? Like I don't.
Yes.
Tin hat.
Is this a real thing?
Well,
They
it's-
live over by what is it? West Virginia is where one of the satellites are, where they can't have communications towers, and then they live near.
Well, when you have radio telescopes and other sorts of things, you can't have radio waves nearby because it messes up the signal to noise. And so some areas around the Earth have bans on Wi-Fi and cellular and the kinds of things that are pretty common everywhere else. And there's certain people who view they can feel the radio waves causing them harm and distress and chronic fatigue and other trauma. And they've found that if they move to a place where there are no radio waves, they feel better. So
We're going to first enter our password, too, by the way. Because sometimes the radio waves go so deep past West Virginia and they enter our laptops.
So you will just age faster if you're around this stuff?
if you're under receiving a lot of high-powered microwave radiation, like you tune antennas or you work in magnetic resonance or you are in magnetic resonance imagers a lot, then it's basically converted to heat in your body.
It's cooking you slowly.
And so it's cooking you slowly. So it's a little different than X-rays or ionizing particles that break the DNA bonds, in that it doesn't actually break the DNA bonds. It just heats everything, the DNA and membranes and everything. And so it's basically the same as cooking. It is the same frequency as a microwave oven.
So it's like meeting someone who's from Alaska versus someone who's from Miami, and like the difference in how much the sun hits their face.
Yeah. Well, so the sun's.
Have you met anyone from Alaska? Like everyone looks like they're 11. They're in no sun. Then meet like a 40-year-old from Miami. Look
Isn't
like they're
it like
dead.
sun for like 24 hours sometimes though?
I don't know.
Isn't that, or is that
Well,
in,
no, but-
or,
well.
I don't know. It's all day and night sun.
Listen, I don't know anything.
Different levels of cooking.
Isn't it winter? They have 75% of the day is night in the winter, and 75% of the day during the summer is the day.
So it averages out.
Yeah. All right.
You go.
Speaking of DNA, on to
Let's
the
go
next
on.
question. All right, Reese.
What is a good biological clock that is a measure of aging?
Oh,
Your neck.
now we have a lot of smart answers. Okay, I'm gonna go to the back.
That's
That guy's
very
most
good.
excited,
What is
and then we'll come
Slightly
to you.
cooked neck.
Yeah. When you got like a turkey wobble, you're like, that's
All
an
right, good
old
bones,
bitch.
bones, measure of aging.
That's a good. I don't get the question.
Okay.
Telomere length.
It's like a something
it?
on.
Telomere length.
Telomere life.
So telomeres is a popular one and a common one, and that's the ends of your. Well, there's a better one. If
Wait, the ends of your what?
Snap, snap.
Good answer. Was that the second best answer?
that's the second best
Did
answer.
you
That
say
is a good.
tongue length?
No, a
So-
Do I get the
so,
telomere
second
length.
best?
On the
Oh.
ends of your chromosomes,
We
there
could
are
really fool you about a lot of things.
caps.
Your tongue just keeps growing longer. as
We
you
measure
go.
how old you'll
wrong
be
again?
by the length.
You want to be wrong again?
What is A?
All right. Well, hey, you get Eureka then.
He was gonna give it to you anyway. Haven't you seen all the other questions?
Attitude.
Such a sassy
Eureka.
Oh. Let's give it to him. He just.
You must be a scientist.
Mitochondrial
Or a
DNA,
linguist.
is that another one?
We can. Come on down. He demanded it.
What's your answer?
Mitochondrial DNA?
That's close to.
But we
we'll-
already
we'll
have
the
an
answer.
A. What is your name, sir?
My name is Brian.
Right, all right. You had the telomere answers.
That was, the second best answer.
The second best. Did you have any other answers?
The birth certificate.
Okay, it's not real. All right. And are you a scientist yourself, or you just dig science, or?
I just know very limited information. You hit me at the right point of something I happen to know.
And you kind of stuck up for yourself there with the article.
I thought I had a technicality on my side, you know?
Fair enough, sir. All right, we're going to give you a book, A Brief History of Everyone Who Has Ever Lived. We're talking about aging. This is all humans.
Boom.
The human story retold through our genes. All right, give him a round of applause.
Yay!
Give him the round of applause.
There's your answer.
So the telomere length, which is the caps at the ends of chromosomes getting shorter as you get closer to dying, is a good measure. And it turns out recently discovered is an even better measure, which is what's called the Horvath clock, which is the epigenetic marks on your DNA, which are carbons added to genes to turn them on or off. Like the genes that turn on puberty are turned off at some point, and the genes that, say, grow taller are also turned off. And so as you age, you get more and more of your genes are methylated and turned off. And so if you can measure this, which has only been possible in the last 10 years, that you can predict more accurately how long each person's going to live, or each creature.
What are some typical genes that get turned off due to methylation, and at what age?
Well, so if you think about the developmental cycles of divide, differentiate the cells into different organs and things, well, those you want to turn off, because if those genes keep going, it creates cancers, which are the wrong thing being expressed at the wrong time in the wrong part of the body.
Are they going to figure out a way to turn on and off certain genes, like down the line, do you think?
Yes.
Like, I want to keep this good gene on that keeps me young, and I want to turn this bad cancer gene off.
Yes.
When?
I don't know. Can you give her like a date on her Google Calendar or something?
Yeah.
But
I just want to
after
set an
next week.
alarm.
After next
Okay.
week.
Also-
Sometime after today.
Also, maybe we address who is they in her question.
Oh, well, so there are thousands of laboratories with hundreds of thousands of people working on that problem all around the world. And so they are people working in genetics and epigenetics and molecular biology and trying to modify that. So things in the categories like CRISPR that many people have heard of, and other ways to reprogram the genome and reprogram the genes is an area called synthetic biology or biotech in general.
Awesome.
Right.
I mean, huge thank you to all of those people. I just can't imagine what life would be like without all of the crazy people that have built what we have now.
Yeah, but also hurry up, make that happen.
But
I
on the
mean, get a
flip
move
side,
on.
though,
After next week, Jesus, anything can happen.
but aren't there people also saying, like, this is bad, like, this isn't, like, God's way, and then, they want people to die eventually, because then we'd be overpopulated and shit, you know what I mean?
Well,
That's opening a whole other
But
Well,
how long are we going to have that before we just download ourselves into computers anyway?
That's true.
Should we even skip
It's
the
a
whole
race.
gene thing?
The information technology is expanding or improving exponentially fast, so twice as good of a year. But this genetic editing, the ability to read DNA, change it, and write it back, is improving even faster, approximately 5 times faster than Moore's law. And so it's an exponential change, but it's on a faster pace than
Why is that?
infotech. Well, because it's using microscopes and memory and chemistry and compute power and robotics all simultaneously. And so if each one of those are getting twice as good, then they have a
I see,
multiplying
yeah.
effect.
It's amazing.
Like if we're turning off or turning on genes, like if I have recessive blue eyes, could I then, get them, dominant by turning off my brown eyes genes?
It's harder to do it in an adult where you have a trillion cells.
We could try harder.
We're back where, yeah, well, it's coming. But back when you were a single cell, it'd be pretty easy to do.
Okay, so I just gotta-
When was the last time he was a single cell?
depends who you ask, to be honest. You don't want to know.
Also, how is this sounds really expensive.
Yeah.
Like this doesn't sound like something I'm gonna I'm gonna go to like
It's not
Starbucks
like a
and get a
flu
coffee and
shot.
then you guys want to jump next door and change our eye color
Yeah.
like as well?
Well,
It
it's
sounds really pricey.
it's also an ethical issue, in the same month roughly that the Science and Nature journals came out and said we should hold off and do this slower. The Chinese had published that they had already done it on 40 embryos. Of
Also,
humans.
did someone just clone a monkey?
Yeah, China did. Yeah.
Wow.
You just got to go get the Chinese. It's a cheaper version. It just you got to get your genes flipped in Beijing. I guess.
And
Go ahead.
well,
Reese.
and China has a different ethical framework on such things, and so they're proceeding much faster at doing these kind of things in humans than in this country,
So will they develop superhumans sooner than we will?
if that's their goal.
If that's.
But is this technology also in China being built by 9-year-olds? Because if that's the case, it's probably not going to work out that well
Well,
the
they-
Fox
in terms of longevity. All right.
It's just because their 9-year-olds are smarter.
Sure, there's
even
They are.
though at times it may seem that the devices and electronics that we get are assembled by young people over there, there are also a higher amount of people that are writing papers on AI or writing papers on the synthetic biology and stuff like that. So we're falling behind.
And if those people were looking after their kids, they wouldn't be building our iPhones. Okay, that didn't go anywhere. I take it.
Preach, preach.
But also with what's his nuts is law, and if there's more people,
Wait,
if there's
who?
more people
That's-
in China writing more papers.
We're looking out for you. These are very nice. They're comfortable. I've tried them on myself.
Can we see
No
you try it
comment.
on?
You want to try it on, see if it
We would
fits?
love to see if it fits.
Try them on.
Here,
Try them on.
Put it on. This is like a hazing ritual. There it is. Yes. Yes.
Wow.
And contact. Good round of applause. Here's another one for your friend.
Great.
There you go. Like how I gave her an extra one. Say, make a friend.
You know what? I've thought about wearing those at like sporting events or whatever. You have a few beers. You don't want to get up and miss something. You
Right.
just piss yourself.
That's very smart of you.
The singularity. Just piss yourself.
And it makes a good hat. Look at that. That's nice.
Yeah, old diaper head.
It's a good hat too. That's funny.
So you'll live longer than most because you're playful.
Aw.
Laughter, the best medicine.
All right, Reese. Let's unpack this.
Maximum life expectancy is probably not changing at all. That Buddha lived till 80, Plato lived till 80, people are living till 80 now. The reason the average life expectancy is changing is fewer babies are dying, and fewer women die in childbirth, and fewer people die of violent deaths and infectious disease. And so the average is moving up, but the maximum is still around 120 or less, and that doesn't seem to be changing. So you can see in 1925, roughly 100 years ago, babies died in the first year quite frequently. As more than 40% of babies died, and as childbirth, birthing, and infant care and child care has improved, the curve is shifted to the right, and it's estimated that by 2075, the average person might live until say age 80 or to 90, but not more than 115. And in fact, the oldest person who's ever lived to about 123, but she died 20 years ago, and nobody's lived close to that since. And so if anything, the maximum life expectancy measured carefully might be getting shorter and not longer.
Because
where
of
the
cell phones.
yeah,
We're getting cooked.
And
The wires in my
Coca-Cola and all the other
Right.
unhealthy things that we consume. Yeah.
So basically, people are just going to live worse for the same amount of time.
Yeah.
Like we just pump our bodies full of radiation and McDonald's. And
It's
live
a
to 80.
choice to do that.
I
Yeah,
know. I'm
but
saying,
it's
can
so
we? Am I
good.
allowed
Is
to
he allowed to live?
be awful to myself and still probably live to 85?
Well, you can just put yourself on this graph right here where you want to be.
Can I just have an answer without having to figure out the graph?
Just judge him, please.
Enjoy the present moment.
It's just
Ooh.
basically
All
now
You're
we're
not gonna live
dying.
that
I'm
long.
trying to.
If they tell you to enjoy the present moment,
Yeah.
your
That
time
means-
is-
yeah.
it's-
So less and less people are going to die in their 30s, 40s, 50s down the line. It's
Yeah, because they're not in like battle or jousting or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
Jousting.
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 A lot of
Let's
jousting.
bring out the chart of jousting deaths just so you can see how bad it was.
At least $1 million a year back in
Yeah,
the days
back
of
then,
jousting.
yeah.
They're jousting and
Everyone's
dueling
grandfather
and,
died
That's right.
jousting.
Or accidental jousting deaths, you know?
Yeah,
falling off their mule, you know.
Yeah, the mule that they were jousting
Yeah.
in.
Those are slow jousts, by the way, if you're on a mule.
Poncho, me and him jousting
You just
together.
met the wrong mules.
But
And
it all
fast.
comes to one singularity.
Yeah, well, so at some point you go from living to not living, and
Write that
and that-
down. That's a keeper.
and that change is unpredictable. And is it different than going to sleep? Nobody knows.
Is that a threat?
Nice.
Is he threatening us?
Yeah.
Is he going to send Sophia after us?
There's
Nobody knows.
poison on
But-
your seats.
But if you move most of your essence to the internet before that happens, that essence will still be there.
Yeah. And I just want to address this
The
point.
essence.
The essence.
Just
I
the
want
essence.
my essence on the internet.
Let's
I gotta clean up my essence.
Quick address this point because it's a major part of the conversation, and we had Julie touched on it a little bit. Is the idea of overpopulation? As countries become developed, their populations actually typically stabilize. So the more and more countries that become first world countries, it's looking like we might, the U.S. and many other countries, have a replacement fertility rate of about 2. So a couple will have 2 kids, or even sometimes less. So the population is looking like it's going to stabilize sometime in the next couple of decades at somewhere around like 9 billion or so. Past that, though, with technological advances, what do you foresee? People living longer, the population increasing due to that?
Well, so the population explosion that was sort of popularized in the 50s and 60s had an exponential graph going up and up and up, and the things in biology don't do that. That's sort of a mathematical illusion, in that most things in biology are an S curve, in that they go up and then they slow down. And like microbes on a petri dish, they grow exponentially until they run out of food, and then they slow down. And if they run completely out of everything, they die. But the population of people has been on this exponential curve, and most obviously in the last 100 years, there's 6 billion more people than there was 100 years ago. And that's a pretty radical change. And so there's theories that we would get too many people and run out of food and run out of resources and so forth. And that's happening to some extent, certainly stressing the planet. But the birth rate is slowing down, and the more developed a country is and the more women are educated in a country, the slower the birth rate. And so it's a bit of a competition between educating women and religions that say breed the women. And that in the countries where women are less educated, they have more babies, and the population growth is continuing, even where it's resource starved. And in the developed countries, the population growth is slowed down to almost negative in several European countries, even the US and so forth. So the population growth has flattened out in developed countries with high education, especially of women. And the sort of world's expert in this area is a guy named Hans Rosling, who died recently, but he said about 8 years ago, the Earth reached peak baby, where, in the same analogy as peak oil, where the number of new babies being born had peaked. And so inevitably, for the world of all people, the population is slowing down. It's still going fast in some countries, but in many countries, as I mentioned, developed countries, it's slowing down or negative.
And then, with the use of new technologies, will our average life expectancy be increasing, and could that cause some sort of potential overpopulation of their?
Well, the most obvious you can see on the 1925 graph is that 100 years ago, almost half of babies died in birth or in the first year, and with improving care, that's gone away, and so younger people are dying less, which means they live to be older. So the overall population is shifting to be older, and so it's something it's kind of a trend where an 80-year-old might live a little bit longer, but a 4-year-old definitely will live a lot longer than they would have 100 years ago.
So I have a question. If the ability to like modify your genetics and DNA and all that stuff starts to like catch up with population growth, wouldn't the maximum life expectancy eventually start going up?
Well, that's an excellent question.
I know.
Excellent question.
So,
There's like how long a species lives is coded in the DNA, and so for example, dogs live in dog years 1/7 as much as people do.
first of all, my dog will never die. You go ahead.
And dogs, live in the same house, eat the same food, sleep on the same bed, every similar lifestyle, exercise the same amount, but they die much sooner. And the main difference between people and dogs is the DNA. And then whales and tortoises live to be twice as old as people, or many times
So
more.
how do we get that whale DNA?
Well,
Let's get some tortoise and
You gotta go to China.
Whale
Get to China.
Yeah, and some trees live thousands of years, for example. And
boom, tree dogs.
So
done.
this is like software, and our DNA is software, and it's programs written in genes, coded in our software that says, grow now, have puberty now, breed now, menopause now, die now.
But you were saying we could change that eventually.
Exactly.
And that's when we're going to live longer.
Yes,
And
and
that's when there might be
Until
some
we-
overpopulation on the planet because people are living.
well, you mentioned already it's going to be very expensive, and so
Right.
So the Kardashians will live forever, and I'm going to die at 82. Great.
Essentially, yeah.
God.
82 is a nice age.
All right, I do. Let's
Okay.
Let's
I love the term peak baby, by the way. It's
Peak
like, where were
baby?
you when peak baby
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
know?
that's good.
That's also
So-
a good band name. You guys see
Peak
Peak Baby?
It's on top of the mountain.
Yeah, they were at the
Peak Baby.
Warfield last week. It was awesome. Their
So,
first album was better, but
this brings us to how much data is in our software, is in a human genome, and is that more or less than the blockchain?
50.
Data is in a human genome.
What is the
Okay,
question?
not exactly sure. I think 6 billion base pairs, so would that be 6 gigabytes? If you
Yeah.
think about a byte like that?
Eureka.
Eureka!
Yeah,
Awesome.
6 gigabytes? Was that the?
Yeah, well, there's 3 billion pairs, and the pairs double is 6. Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Great job. You can shake his hand. She said
Well
50.
done.
And what is your name?
Sarah.
Or do you study biology or?
I'm a biology teacher.
What?
Well, damn. All right. Well, then I take it you know something about epigenetics. Ooh, your favorite. Give her a round of applause. Joy's book about the Epigenetics Revolution.
Wait, how old are you?
Is she like the first
She's
12-year-old biology
Yeah,
teacher?
what the hell? See, she's a biologist, so she's been fucking around with her DNA.
Yeah, give us your
You're
secrets.
probably like 60, but you look 12. Jesus
You have an
Christ.
unspecified age. It's just very good.
She teaches biology.
So biology
So
is
gotta be
developing
older.
faster than computers.
What?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
That's me. Okay.
So there's
Veering
3
off.
billion pairs, which is 6 billion letters. So and that amount of data is 700 megabytes of data, which is a lot less than the blockchain, which is for Bitcoin is about 35 megabits.
And 4 megabytes of data.
Well, and so people have 99%, 99.9% of our DNA is the same. And so you can say, well, how am I different than you, or how are we different than that monkey?
Well, I've learned how I'm different from you during this talk.
Yeah, I'm dumb, you're smart.
Yeah,
Well, that-
clearly there's a big divide here.
But that's hardly different at all, and so that difference can be encoded in.
I need
in
just
a
like
small
5 of
amount
your
data.
difference genes injected into me. That didn't even make sense. See, I told you the difference is
Give me
big.
your difference genes.
Give me your difference genes.
So
Jordache.
A canopy plant has 150 billion base
Yeah,
pairs?
and so more isn't better.
Interesting.
And that some organisms that move.
That human
tend-
looks pretty upset though. I
Yeah,
think he
Yeah.
wants to
it's
be that
miserable.
canopy plant. He's
Literally live in
bummed
three
out.
black holes.
So
probably.
he's looking at the plant.
Yeah, he's like 150 billion. Come on.
And so it takes energy to copy your DNA, and plants tend to have more DNA than animals that move, mostly because they're stuck there and they have to choose which genes to turn on and off based on the changing environment where an animal would move based on where its genetics were more comfortable.
You got that?
So, and
got nothing.
also things that are
Genuine
interesting about the amount of homology or comparative DNA that we have with things like a banana. It's like about 50%, and then
What's homology?
Same DNA.
Okay. Why don't you just say DNA?
I did afterward. I did afterward. And then like a monkey is 99%, and then another human's 99.9%. So can you maybe in the amount of megabytes of data, what would the difference be then between like you and I? It's 0.1% of our DNA, but what is that then? Is that 4?
It was
It's
on
right
the
there.
on the slide. 4 megabytes.
Boom. So that's all it takes to have potentially certain genetic differences between humans. Just that little.
And monkeys, which were just announced as being cloned for the first time, where they take all the DNA out of a fertilized egg and swap in different DNA to clone the monkey, and they just in China, of course, birthed 2 of them today. They
birthed 2 today?
Well, they announced it today. They birthed over the last couple of weeks.
Wow.
Whoa.
And then they measured their DNA and it was identical?
Well, and so our DNA might be only 8 or 10 megabytes different than the monkey's DNA.
Yeah.
So what if we just like stuck a USB key in the monkey and would it turn into a human?
I'm glad you're following the slides.
You know what I mean?
I've spent a lot of work on these to make it.
So
But
So it's possible
If you put it in its black hole.
there are
Aw.
so that works both ways. You can take things out that are problems like viruses and stuff like that. And so George Church at Harvard is working on taking the viruses and things that are wrong in the DNA out and fix them. And then you can also change things by putting new things in. And so in 2010, the first living creature built completely out of parts was booted up. The parents of the creature were a computer, and the DNA was synthetic and some extra dry chemicals, and it was put together and it booted up and started living.
Wait, what was it?
Well, it's
Name was Tom.
a simple
It's
microbe.
right over there.
Okay.
Our deep fake. It was a simple organism.
A simple microbe.
So they haven't just like made a like monkey hybrid human yet.
Well, so on that same.
That is me.
So that
You see him without his shirt on.
Guilty.
so that creature had a slightly less than 1,000 genes.
Okay.
And since then, they've been taking genes out to see which are important, and they've gotten it down to 473 genes. And that's the minimum number of genes that's necessary to have a self-replicating life.
Okay.
And they don't know what a third of them even do.
And there's like 30,000
No, 473.
in 30,000 total for a human.
Oh, human has 23,000.
23,000.
Yeah.
So then 473 are the ones that make life, basically.
Yeah, for this. Well,
What the hell do the rest do?
well They
Just there for
color
show.
the eyes, and they do
They
fancy
color the
things.
eyes. Okay, yeah, that's light. Okay, I didn't know that was.
This minimal creature is a urinary tract infection microbe.
Is it really?
Oh,
Wait, is it really a urinary tract?
Yeah.
What scientist thought of that? Like, we need something to experiment on.
Yeah.
Give me a second. I'm in pain right
So
now.
it's like
Yeah.
really
A
small.
scientist
like
who
you
went to
can't even
Vegas
see
and
it.
came
I was
back with a
picturing some
problem.
Sort of like creature.
So that
Can't
was
believe
Craig
they
Venter.
Wait, why did they choose a urinary tract? Are they fucking with us? What was this like a big? Why would they choose that?
Well, that was Craig Venter who picked that, and he's
Did
he was also in San Diego. He's the first guy who sequenced the human genome completely, and he chose to
He
sequence
says
his
it
own.
burns when I pee.
Well, he did. He wasn't specific
444
where
genes.
this organism came from.
Wow.
All right,
Urinary
let's
tract infection.
let's make sure we get to.
Unbelievable.
Oh, this is another awesome graphic.
So this is a complicated chart.
Is this Big Bang?
So that's the genesis of DNA life on this planet. Whether that genesis came here from somewhere else or started chemically here is open for debate.
Like 3 billion years, 3.5 billion years ago, right here.
Well, probably more than 4 billion years ago, but
So
that's
the
on the
Big
chart.
Bang.
It's there. And so this is all of
Back
the evolutionary cousins of those first organisms. And humans are way over on the right-hand side. And so you can see the relationship. These are the family relationships between humans and every other kind of creature that lives or has lived on Earth. And that everybody is cousins.
How sweet is that?
We are all cousins. It's
We're
good.
all
And-
cousins.
And so if the difference between these different versions of cousins is the DNA software, you can take the software from one kind that lives longer and change it in another kind that maybe lives shorter to change it to live longer.
Now we're talking.
There it is. And that's how, are you relating that to the singularity in terms of extending human life? Or how would you relate biohacking?
That it's software.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to the next question. Make sure we get to all of our epic ones.
So how are blockchains and genetics similar or different?
We have an excited person here.
Does everyone here know what a blockchain is?
Yeah, that just implies we all know
Yeah,
what that is.
I was gonna ask, but I didn't want to ask again.
Yeah, no problem.
So they're both a chain of data that if you take one piece out, it changes the whole chain basically.
Like Jenga.
Oh.
Jenga.
Like a blockchain.
And
Really
And-
says in the title.
well,
really
I'll go with the Eureka on that. So.
Yeah, Eureka!
All right.
This crowd's on a roll, man. The last four.
Oh,
Boom, right away.
Woo!
Good job.
All right. Hey, buddy. And good. What's your name?
Daniel.
Daniel. All right. And do you like invest in any blockchain technology? Just out of curiosity. We're in, SF. Everyone's got like Bitcoin or some other coin or
No, I haven't.
nothing. Did you like miss out or you don't care or?
No, I'm philosophically opposed to blockchain.
Are you really?
Ooh.
Get out of
Oh,
here.
Wait, is that real?
Are you
Why?
philosophically opposed to it?
Blockchain, I work in renewable energy, and blockchain consumes a ton of energy.
It
and
does.
So I
Oh,
think
wow.
other cryptocurrencies would be better.
Okay, wow. Say like
Oh,
Bitcoin.
wait,
I
like
say.
which one? Get us
No,
in
but
on the
Bitcoin's
ground
bad
floor.
though, because all the energy they used to mine it and shit
It
makes
consumes a lot. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you some true Silicon Valley swag. You may not own a Bitcoin, but now you have a Bitcoin keychain.
Wow.
Watch out. Who's the pimp? There you go. I
my
bet
God.
you. Would you actually use that?
Oh, totally.
I swear. All right, you can put it on your keychain and say, like, oh, look at me. I'm
Just flash it at the ladies
philosophically
like they're the keys to your Benz.
This is
Yeah,
worth
it is.
15,000 US dollars.
there it is. All right, give it to the philosophically opposed to
Yay.
blockchain.
Actually, that was the first time when he said I was philosophically opposed. In my mind, I was like, what could be the reason? And then he works in renewable energy, and I was like, that's a very valid, interesting reason. Yeah.
So it turns out that the blockchain for Bitcoin, which is one of 2,000 different kinds of blockchains, is energy inefficient. And in some sense, a blockchain records and saves every single transaction that's ever happened since its genesis, which was for Bitcoin only 10 years ago. But every single transaction is reaffirmed every time you issue a new block and issue new Bitcoins. And that is done using algorithms that use a lot of compute power and a lot of electricity, and so it's using an enormous amount of electricity, and if it continues on, it may use more electricity than everything else. But if you compare that to the amount of electricity that's used in all these tall buildings with banks in them and all the people commuting to that and so forth, the regular money uses a lot more electricity than blockchain still. However, it doesn't have to be consuming energy to replicate the block. And one of the differences of how genetics has evolved in that complicated chart that we saw is that the genetics doesn't save every gene that's ever been. In some species, it saves many, but not all of them. And so evolution and natural selection has figured out how to throw away some of the information that blockchain continues to carry on. And this hasn't yet happened to Bitcoin-style blockchains, but it likely will. And the other thing on that chart is there are millions, like 3 or 4 million different kinds of species, and that's each species is sort of like has its own DNA, and it's sort of like it has its own blockchain. And the metabolism of the species is like a token. And so in the Cambrian explosion after the origin of life, there was went from a few species to several million species relatively rapidly. And so right now there's about 2,000 kinds of crypto tokens. Bitcoin is one, Ethereum's another, and there's perhaps 1,000 different types of blockchain that use different algorithms. Some are faster, some are more energy efficient, and natural selection is going to sort out which one survives more. But the Cambrian explosion of blockchains is likely to happen, going from presently 2,000 kind of blockchains to 2 million different kinds of blockchains. So everybody could have a coin in their own blockchain. And some of these are going to keep all the data, and some are going to throw away data, and natural selection will decide which ones become most popular.
So what's the most energy efficient cryptocurrency right now, and should we invest in it?
FOMO.
Well, so sort of in the news today was the company Stripe, which figures out the credit card processing of your transactions in many cases, which has been doing transactions in Bitcoin for a while, decided to stop doing transactions in Bitcoin because it costs between $10 and $30 to process a Bitcoin transaction. So if you're buying a Starbucks with Bitcoin, that's not really practical. And they said that they're going to shift to processing in one called Stellar, which is more efficient, and it uses a concept of proof of stake as opposed to proof of work, which is proof of work basically comes down to how much electricity did you burn. And a proof of stake is how many things have you processed before. And so it's a more energy efficient kind of blockchain, and thus it can be done less expensively and faster. But there are hundreds, if not over 1,000 different kinds of blockchains, and it's very early days to figure out which species is going to become dominant, but for sure there won't be only one.
And it's important to figure out, like what we did with genetics, why do we not have a blockchain all the way back 3.5 billion years? It's just not efficient. So how with these next million blockchains that are made, how are we going to figure out how to not burn so much energy with storage?
Yeah, well, what happened in evolution of replicating DNA is different kinds of machinery evolved to replicate the DNA more efficiently, and the different kinds of programs of epigenetics and aging and different styles of replication, from division to sexual reproduction, which is shuffling different sets of DNA together. And so this has evolved over billions of years, and lots of different strategies have emerged, and several different strategies coexist in the world today. And so that is likely to happen with the blockchains. But one of the fundamental things is every time you copy DNA, it takes energy, and biochemical energy in the case of biology. And if you are replicating it for Bitcoin, it's using electrical energy. And so if you can make that more efficient, faster, likely that species of more efficient will survive better, especially in tough times, where the less efficient ones will be selected against.
And do you own any cryptocurrency?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't
Yeah.
hack me.
Yeah, let me know what they are, because I'll buy those, because I think that's probably the best bet. I'm just going to do what you say. But
Last
okay,
question.
last question. Everyone was just silent about
Yeah.
that one, weren't they?
It's a lot. It's been a lot of our brains are. I feel
Is
are
it-
just
I can
like
feel the
sponges,
heat
just full
radiating.
of water, and we need to wring them out after this. You know what I mean?
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. This is our final question, by the way.
That's what
Question 8.
sleep. That's what sleep will do. It'll bake in all the good stuff and. take over.
Yeah. So I'll go to sleep right after this. I just spat all over myself.
Yeah, we're gonna have a big nap party after.
So if you remember one thing from tonight, the word is nyatni.
Okay.
And so
Nyatni.
what is nyatni, and why does it matter?
You know, I grew up in Nyatni, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Next to Schenectady.
It just sounds like
Nyatni.
it just sounds like a toddler. Yeah.
All right.
Nyatni.
Can you pass?
Hashtag Nyatni.